The third of the police cases in the Freddie Gray saga came to an end today. The judge issued a ruling. This was another bench trial. So we've had one jury trial, which ended in a hung jury. And we had two bench trials. The last one was an acquittal, and this one is also an acquittal. This case, Goodman is the Caesar Goodman is the officer, and he was the one that drove the van. He's the one that's accused of doing the rough ride, and this was thought to be the one that had the strongest evidence for conviction. So there's a lot going on out there, just from looking at just responses on Twitter and stuff. Some people are really mad at prosecutor Mosby and her team for the way they seemingly botched these cases. I don't know that I would say that. I think that there are a lot of challenges in prosecuting police cases. So one of the things that stuck out, if I have it here, I thought I copied it down from the judge, what he said earlier. I had copied it down just to be able to read. So basically, it's the same. It's basically a similar rationalization as the last case. There's an element to the argument that, to meet the burden, prosecutors have the burden. Prosecutors have to meet the burden. There was no jury before which, in this case, to appeal to their motion. This is another bench trial, as I mentioned before. Defendants can opt for a bench trial, and I think that Maryland is one of the places where the prosecution does not have the right to object. I could have that backwards, but the one thing, Judge Williams, who was a former city prosecutor himself, and he also investigated police misconduct for the Justice Department, he said that there were 5 equally plausible scenarios for which when Gray could have injured himself. And it actually may not have been clear to Officer Goodson, Officer Goodson, that Gray was injured at any particular point. I really do feel like judges give police officers way too much leeway in terms of their activity, right? So we have this reluctance within the judicial system to see cops as anything other than doing their job. And it makes it very difficult to make a case for situations that are clearly more than just common error mistake that rise to the level of negligence criminally, in this case, malfeasance, things that should actually warrant criminal charges. Now, the police union is saying that this is malicious prosecution, all that other stuff. But what Judge Williams has said, he cited the testimony of the prosecution's medical witness and said that the injuries were progressive and that it's possible that Gray had talked at various points in time along transport, suggesting that it wouldn't have been clear that he was injured. And what he also, because all of this turns on whether or not there was a rough ride. And he says that the rough ride is something that's very inflammatory and evokes a lot of, emotion. And this is not something to just throw around lightly, and that just the prosecution just did not prove. Because again, the prosecution has a very high burden in a criminal case, and just the prosecution did not prove that that's what happened. But we do know that rough rides are a common practice in Baltimore. I mean, there's studies, there's information. Y'all check out, if you don't already follow Liz Brown, Lizz Brown, on Twitter. She's an attorney. She's awesome. She does really great political analysis, way better than I do. She really breaks it down. And one of the things that she says that we need to keep doing is we need to keep supporting prosecutors who are willing to step out there and bring charges, bring cases against cops, right? Like, if we continue to support people and help them feel comfortable in doing so, they will continue to do so, and they will continue to do, a good job of bringing, the best the most vigorous prosecution possible. And I found that was a really interesting statement, because we do see so often prosecutors are reluctant to do so, right? They because I mean, it's like having to go up against your friends, your coworkers. I mean, in some instances, which is why a lot of people, argue for special prosecutors in cases because of how closely prosecutors and police work with each other. There's also something from her timeline that she broke down that suggested, and there's a gag order, so you're not going to hear anything from the prosecutor's office because there is a gag order in place. There was something about how the police department actually had been working with the defense, providing them with notes and other stuff or whatever, which, if true, is so uncanny, right? Of course, they're only doing it because the other defendants are police officers. Like, when does that ever happen? You never see police officers helping to get people off for crimes committed, right? Because, like, isn't it part of their job to make sure people are punished for the crimes they commit? Unless it's part of the crew, and then everybody. But the other thing, which gets to the other thing that Liz said today, Liz said that we really need to break through the blue wall of silence, right? That blue code of silence, because this need to protect each other from accountability and from justified prosecutions, which people can argue whether or not this is justified or not, but somebody who should not have been arrested, was manhandled, was not buckled in, was, whether it was intentional or not, was driven around very roughly, was incapacitated, hospitalized, and died. So we need to get out of the family, was able to recover civilly against the city of Baltimore, but that doesn't do anything. There are civil suits every year in America against police departments all over the country. There are millions and millions of dollars have been paid out for the last decade, at least, if not more, from civil suits against police departments. That clearly is not a deterrent for bad police behavior. We need the laws exist to prosecute police officers. We need people who are willing to do it. And from what I've seen, Prosecutor Mosby, she does seem willing to prosecute these cases. Now, whether or not she needs to because it's the same, I believe it's the same judge. So whether or not she needs to kind of like tighten up or try and figure out another theory of the case, or what she needs to do ahead of the next trial next month, she definitely needs to do that. There was a statement today from the NAACP in Baltimore and the Gray family. The Gray's family, they're very frustrated with the process, but they do support Mosby. You know what I'm saying? The family's attorney, William Murphy, said that Prosecutor Mosby is one of the most courageous prosecutors in the country, and she is fighting for a just cause. You know what I'm saying? So they're still like in there with her. So and for what I saw earlier today, I haven't checked this evening, but what I saw earlier today, people are not happy with the verdict, of course not, but they're taking it in stride the way they need to. And now that he has been found not guilty, Goodson is eligible for back pay, and he's in reinstatement of his pay and back pay. He is still in suspension though, and will face administrative review. And the proceedings are not going to be made public from his administrative process. But I think that we need to have a serious conversation about how police officer conduct is viewed within the judicial system, about standards of reasonableness. And I've said this before, instead of looking at traditional notions, constitutional notions, we've already seen, like I said, the Supreme Court has been expanding what is reasonable, what is acceptable police behavior, and further eroding our civil liberties and rights. They've been doing it for a very long time, and it just continues. Like cops are given more and more leeway, and now y'all have promoted and pushed for body cameras, so they can take you doing anything and everything if they're just walking around. You know what I'm saying? So we need to have a conversation about cops, about how they engage with people. And I understand that they have a job to do. I understand that there's work to be done. I understand, but again, this is one of many cases where there was someone who should not have been detained. You know what I'm saying? Who there was no reason for what ultimately happened to them. None whatsoever. And yet we're sitting here saying, there's no evidence either way that anyone knew or should have known that this could have happened. I mean, if as a parent, if I don't buckle my kid in, right, or if I'm taking care of an elderly person or someone who's mentally incapacitated somehow, and I don't buckle them in when they're in my care, I can be held criminally liable for that. If I don't buckle my kid in, I can be held liable for criminal negligence, because I should have known that not buckling in my child would cause them to be hurt. So when police officers take you in custody, they're responsible for your care and well-being. And when they do things knowingly, right, and antagonistically, that should rise to criminal negligence. It seems like there's a different standard for what's criminally negligent when you talk about police officers and when you talk about the average person. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all people who have our own, issues. They just carry a badge and a gun.